in a second. But
yes.
before we get started, just some housekeeping rules. Again, for those of you who are familiar with Medicare Cafe, welcome back and enjoy the show. For everybody else, Medicare Cafe is done by the hosts. My name is Olivia Richardson.
I'm Mike.
And we, again, Medicare Cafe is a fun show we do every single Tuesday at 10 a.m. Central Standard Time. Very lighthearted, very easy, very quick, typically around targeted topics, but this is a special edition focused solely on hosting events. So if you have any questions, comments, concerns, threats, or promises, put that in the questionnaire box. We will always keep them pretty anonymous. We'll use your first name to answer your question, never your last. If you want to remain completely anonymous, just note that in the question. We'll make sure to do that. Or if you don't want us to read your question, note that as well. But yeah, the more you interact, again, we recognize that this training is for you. You're taking your time out of your day to learn more about this. So any questions or comments you have, go ahead and ask them. There are no stupid questions. If there are stupid questions, Mike will ask them. That's really kind of the only time.
That's my job.
That's the only time you'll really see stupid questions. So
So Olivia has always used her iPad for notes, and I've owned an iPad forever, and I'm finally trying to adopt her style, and I'm completely lost.
So instead of focusing on actually doing the presentation, you're focusing on how to make notes for the presentation as we're doing the presentation.
I cannot confirm nor deny.
I just want to be
that's
very
happening.
clear about that. So let's get into it, okay? We're digging into hosting events.
Let's jump into
why do we want to talk about events? So Mike and I, we talk about, three-pronged marketing systems. Hosting events is my favorite way to build a client base for two reasons. Number one, it will help you with your marketing. Marketing is the act of actually getting your name, your brand, your logo to become much more well known, for people to become more familiar with you, familiar with your agency. That's what marketing is. Hosting events and doing seminars will help you with marketing. It also helps you with prospecting. Prospecting and marketing are two different things. Marketing is how do I build a brand? Prospecting is how do I get somebody to sit across the table from me, and how do I make money doing this? Hosting events does prospecting as well, because it gets you in front of the public. It helps you earn and helps you gain more appointments. Very few activities in this industry will accomplish both marketing and prospecting. Hosting events does that beautifully.
And one of the big things about having events like this is we had this plan before we went to the MedSub conference. So going to the MedSub conference and talking to others in the field about all these commercials. What used to be AEP was the main source of Medicare commercials with a sprinkling throughout the year. But we're seeing now that they're pushing even further out the AEP ads or the traditional AEP ads. They're starting to do them in June, July, so rather than just focus on 3 months out of the year where you have to really be heavy-handed on your marketing, you almost have to be heavy-handed all year. And this is a great way to compete with as little out-of-pocket costs against the big names that have to spend millions to be relevant in your market.
Right. Another thing is with hosting events is a great way, exactly what Mike was talking about. Since you're not going to be seen more often than Joe Namath, it's a great way to present yourself as the expert. If you put somebody in the front of a room or in front of a camera with a microphone, they're an expert in that, regardless of how much they actually know. Again, but it's just regardless of how much they actually know. Putting them in that as a source as a figure of authority in this situation makes them the expert. So that actually makes it one of the best methods for what we call pull marketing. Two types of marketing, pull and push. I won't get into it too in deep. Push is like sending out flyers, sending out postcards, pushing your information out there.
Right.
Pull marketing is designed to get people to seek you out. That's the ideal golden standard of building a great solid brand, is for people to seek you out, not for you to constantly have to push your content in front of them. Hosting events is the best style of pull marketing because they pull those T65ers. They pull people who are interested in learning more about a certain topic. So again, before we get into the why, hosting events is one of, again, I'll say it a million times, one of the best ways to both market and to prospect for clients.
Yes.
So let's dig into, again, one of the biggest things that people are worried about when it comes to hosting events. That's your reputation. A lot of these times, these events are the first impression between you and a prospect.
Yeah, and if you blow it, basically, they're going to just assume that if you're giving a bad presentation in front of all these people and you're supposed to be on stage, per se, they're just going to assume working with you is going to be that much worse.
Yeah.
So you really have to, I don't want to say knock out of the park, but it really has to be very good. And you have to be, personable, use humor if you can. A lot of things we'll talk about today. But if you have a bad presentation, it's almost worth not doing it than having a bad one.
And there's so much when you're doing these events, kind of the downside or the dark side of events is there's so much just out of your control too.
Yes.
What if the technology isn't working for you? What if you're doing it at a venue and the venue has bad air conditioning, bad heating? What about if the donuts give everybody food poisoning? So there does leave a lot out of your control when doing these events. So you just have to make sure you are extra prepared for everything, regardless if it's virtual or face-to-face.
Yeah, so we're jumping to in-person events right now. Then we'll go into virtual events. So in-person events, obviously right now you have to worry about social distancing, masks, sanitizer if you have any. A lot of this stuff you can get from your vendors, not vendors, your carrier reps.
That's such a great point. These are excellent opportunities for you to partner with United Healthcare, Humana, Aetna. Whenever these organizations are looking to give individuals marketing dollars, one of the best ways to ensure that you get a piece of that pie is by hosting events. They give you tchotchkes, like Mike mentioned, hand sanitizer, bags, things like that. And oftentimes these events don't have to be registered.
Yeah, I wouldn't do sales events where you have to register. You want to keep it much more generic. I think it's easier to do. Of course, we're not going to tell you exactly what kind of event to do today because that's up to you. Whether you want to do a sales event where you take MA enrollments right then and there and Part D enrollments, or if you want to do more general presentations, we're going to go the in general route. But if you have questions about one that you want to perform locally or virtually, always give us a call. We can give you more detailed tips based on what you want to perform. Absolutely. But just really be mindful of, what's happening in society. And obviously more rural markets may not be as concerned as opposed to higher populated areas, more urban markets that have much stricter laws and regulations.
Just be aware of city regulations, venue regulations. Again, just to keep in mind something when it comes to selling in general, it's not how you want to present it, it's how they want to be presented to. So if your clients are really anxious or really scared about it, your beliefs don't matter. You need to cater to your audience for sure.
Precisely. So let's talk about the basics real quick. First and foremost is location.
Location.
Yeah.
Everything.
It's got to be easy to access. If you're going, hey, turn behind Denny's, go down the dark alley, turn left, no one's going to show up. So being a well-known place that you don't have to explain how to get to is going to really help, like libraries or senior centers, obviously. Well illuminated. You want to make sure you have great lights.
I like how you worded that. Good lighting.
Good lighting.
Well illuminated.
Well illuminated, yes.
I like it.
Because you want to make sure it's welcoming and inviting. Even though you don't own the building, it's still reflective of you that you picked this venue for me to come at. So everything that happens in the venue, like Libby talked about, the AC, the too hot, too cold, is going to be reflective on you. Now, you could always apologize and say the building has issues, blah, blah, blah. I would definitely address anything that's wrong with the building so you know that. So the audience knows that you're aware of it and it's out of your control. So don't skirt away from it because they'll just assume that you planned it being too cold and you want to make me miserable and I don't want to work with you now.
I mean, that's fair. Another thing, again, to keep in mind, the location is everything. If you've ever attended even like a business lecture, the location is everything. Also keep in mind, again, don't underestimate, especially these face-to-face events, the importance of convenience, making sure that things are very convenient to get to. In fact, the baby boomer demographic, being people between the ages of 55 and 75 right now, they're the demographic who are noted as valuing convenience over any other demographic. That's huge when it comes to people actually going out of their way to go to an event. So making sure that, again, you do have all the fixins. It's really nice to make sure you have coffee there. Partner with like a local vendor, partner with like a local bakery or something, get cookies there. People love local, especially if you're doing face-to-face events. So you can even ask other individuals, other organizations to sponsor stuff for you as well. Great opportunity for you to partner with others. But the location, again, huge impact on how many people you'll actually see at these events.
And I would say if you're not sure what to do, I always try to go where the seniors already were because they're there already. So rather than focus on marketing, which we'll talk about here in a minute, So you don't have to market. You just have to show up because they're already there. Senior centers, assisted living, independent living. I would say stay away from nursing homes because those are people that a lot of times can't make their own decision anymore. So now you got to try and get the powers of attorneys in there or the social workers, and they have their own ecosystem. So stay away from nursing homes, but assisted living, independent living, senior centers, all those places I would go to and say, hey, I'd love to give a simple no sales lecture about blank. And I would focus on no sales because a lot of those places that seniors are already congregating at don't want someone coming in to sell something. So if you come in as more of a professional rather than a pest,
an advisor.
Yeah, they're going to open the doors to you as opposed to get out.
I like this thing that we're doing.
I'm trying to do more.
We're doing a lot of this.
It's Wednesday. I do more hand motions on Wednesday.
Perfect.
Yes.
So here's something else, again, we talk a lot about. There's a lot of misconceptions about this next part, which is the topic.
Yeah.
What should you be talking about at these events? And there's a lot of, I would not say confusion, but a lot of wrong people. Mike, take it away. We'll talk about that here more in a second, but
we'll give you some ideas in a second, but it has to be useful. So like I never like doing Medicare 101s, only because most people don't care how Medicare works. How is it going to work for me? But that's not to say they don't work. So it's got to be useful. It's got to be informative. So I should be leaving with more knowledge than I showed up with.
For sure.
And it's got to be practical. So the information that, okay, how am I going to use it in my daily or monthly lives, as opposed to just, okay, now I know something that I have no use for whatsoever.
You have to provide value.
Yes.
If you're making people, again, because it's not convenient to do this. Some people, keep in mind, some people will be doing this just for an excuse to leave their house, just for an excuse to see their friends or family. That's beautiful. That's actually wonderful that you are kind of in a social event. If you can create your seminars and your events to be those social events, you've done good. But just keeping in mind too, you do have to provide value at these plans. So a lot of people will do seminars and things like carrier specific stuff. Keep in mind, if you do talk about carrier specifics, those events do have to be registered. So we recommend keeping them not carrier specific. The reason for that, again, you want to promote yourself. You don't want to promote carriers because you don't want to tie yourself too closely to another brand. You want to promote your brand. But here are some examples of things that we recommend talking about. Now, Mike alluded to, as I was being like, hey, no, yeah. What Mike alluded to was actually Medicare 101s. And that's whatever I mentioned earlier where people are just wrong, is because when people think seminars and doing these events, the first thing they ask for is, I need a Medicare 101 presentation. And like Mike mentioned, who cares about Medicare 101?
And I put it this way, how many car insurance 101s have you been to? No, I've never been to one. Or my homeowner's insurance, I know my house is covered. No idea how. It's covered.
Insurance isn't a fun thing or really an insightful thing to talk about. I don't want my doctor to teach me how the human body works. I want the doctor to tell me what I need to know in my situation about the human body. That's how we need to focus on Medicare. Plus, when we do a Medicare 101 presentation, it's about an hour and a half. It's a lot of information. So what I recommend doing instead, Medicare 101, the only good thing about a Medicare 101 presentation is that it does attract the turning 65 demographic. However, it only attracts the turning 65 demographic. If you're talking to somebody who's been on Medicare for a number of years, then why would they go to a Medicare 101? They feel like, I know what I need to know about it. It works for me. I don't want to know the ins and outs of it.
Yeah.
So these types of topics that we're going to talk about here are topics that are both good for people who are turning 65, people who are that baby boomer demographic that we're all going for, but also people who've been on Medicare for some time and are wanting to learn. So it really, instead of throwing a very targeted net, it throws a bigger net. You get in front of more prospects, which means you're going to get more appointments. Love these topics that Mike put together. Not only did Mike put these together, but actually Mike built the presentations. If you have a contract,
we do have these, don't we?
We do.
That's probably why they came to mind.
That's exactly why they came to mind. If you are an agent with senior marketing specialists, we have something called seminars in a box. They're on our website. What the seminars in a box will do is they actually have flyers, follow-up cards, the presentations, a script. They have all of this for you to present on. So you don't have to worry about building this. They're already built.
Yeah, I love the saving money on prescription drugs because if you're new to Medicare, if you're before Medicare, if you've been on Medicare for 10 years, who doesn't want to save money on drugs? Top 10 things to know about Medicare, that in lieu of your Medicare 101, because that's something that would play to new beneficiaries and existing beneficiaries. Medicare Updates is a great monthly webinar to do, to say, hey, here's what's upcoming, here's what's in the news, here's my view on it. And as we mentioned at the beginning, having these monthly is a great inexpensive marketing technique that the big names that are using, has-been celebrities or has-been football players.
Don't name it.
Yeah. They can't do that. They're just running commercials saying, please call us, we can sell you something. You're saying, hey, please let me educate you. And if I can help you with the policy, let me know. So that's something to do, the Medicare Updates monthly. And also what Medicare doesn't cover. I call this the live at 10 tonight's news, or whatever you want to call it, because the news is always like, your kids are going to die if you don't do this.
Let me tell you how.
Stay tuned at 11. So it's like, hey, I'm going to scare you into coming. I think you say what Medicare doesn't cover, and that's great for cross-selling dental, vision, hearing, cancer, all these other things that Medicare doesn't cover, but there's a good chance that your clients and prospects may not be aware.
Peter asks, how big of a crowd do these topics draw, and which one offers the best return of investment?
Ooh, good question.
Honestly, the topic has some to do with it, but what's really going to affect the crowd size and affect the return of investment is actually the advertising and promotion for it.
Yep.
These topics are going to do better than a Medicare 101, but depending on, but the rest of it really does go towards promotion and advertising, which we'll talk about here in a little bit.
So I did a ton of seminars in the field. The best one I ever did had a doctor come out and speak. I think we had over 70 people show up at that one. I've done seminars with heavy advertising that 3 people showed up. So there's, like Olivia said, it's heavy on advertising, it's heavy on topic. If you have a book of business, you have people that already know you that will more than likely show up.
For sure.
So,
and encourage them to bring their friends, invite your book of business, encourage them, bring a friend, bring a neighbor, bring someone else to hear this. But again, it's the biggest thing when it comes to doing events, regardless if it's face-to-face or virtual, it's consistency. Your first few events, you may have 1, 2, 0 people show up, but the more you do them on a consistent basis, the more people can expect them. Consistent being twice a month, once a month, more than just once or twice a year. Just making sure you're advertising that you do these consistently, you'll start to gather more of a crowd because it'll be something people are more familiar with.
Now, we get this objection all the time. I don't have time to do this. How long it takes to do a seminar? Well, let me tell you, you should be going for about 18 minutes because that's how long the average human can sustain on one topic. That's why TED Talks are about 18 to 20 minutes. So treat your seminar like your own personal TED Talk. They're 18 minutes, they're informative. A lot of times they use humor. So if you can inject humor in there, great, nothing crude or offensive, but you crack dad jokes or mom jokes, whatever you want to do. Because you figure your welcome's gonna be 1 to 2 minutes. Here's who I is, here's why we're here, here's what I do. 18 minutes content, 5 minutes of Q&A. And that's one thing about Q&A is, if no one raises their hand, expect no one to ask a question.
No one's going
and you can say, here are the top 3 questions again, the subject. So have staged questions.
Good.
And that may crack open the audience and say, what, I had that question, but here's my view on it. So, and then a thank you. So your total time is 25 to 30 minutes.
Got some great questions. Peter is like, you guys are already a minute. Now we're 2 minutes over our 18-minute time span. So Peter,
I know.
Do what we say, not what we do, okay?
But see, we're talking about different topics. We're moving to different topics.
Yes. Now Terry was asking if we should ask for an RSVP, and that's a great question. We get it a lot. Keep in mind what an RSVP does, what it does for you, what it does for the client. There's definitely positives and negatives to it. What I would say is ask for an RSVP, do not require an RSVP.
Right.
The reason for that, the great way to do that is actually doing through a Facebook event, inviting people to a Facebook event. It's great because it gives you an idea of how many people will be there to help you prep. However, for anybody who's ever planned a party ever, 30 people will RSVP, you may get 6 that show up. So RSVPs, though they are great to kind of give you a heads up, don't really allude that well to the numbers that'll be there. What an RSVP does on behalf of the client, it does add a little bit of social pressure or commitment that they'll attend. So, to say, did you RSVP? If they RSVP'd yes, they're less likely to stand you up. They're more likely to attend that event versus if they don't. What it also does, though, it does make people not comfortable with just showing up. So for people to bring their family members or loved one, people who are at their house, they're less likely to bring friends and neighbors if they have to RSVP because it makes it seem more formal. So there are pros and cons to it. You have to decide what's best for you. My thing is, what I would do would be RSVP for a chance to win something. Maybe people who sign up ahead of time have a chance to win, you know, this bicycle for their kids. So, but make it optional. Don't make it so pressed on RSVP or you can't attend.
Free bottle of Bengay, whatever you want to do. What's that? Say that because you speak French.
Répondez, s'il vous plaît.
Oh, that's s'il vous plaît.
Please respond.
Yeah, that's what RSVP stands for. I was curious.
Répondez, s'il vous plaît.
Oh, fascinating.
Cool.
So yes, there's my ADD in full effect. See, my 18 minutes was up and I was like, I'm off to other things. So. But yeah, again, if you ever watch a TED Talk, or if you haven't, just Google TED Talk, and there's tons of them out there, and model your presentation after that. And that there's a reason TED Talks are super successful, because it's a format that works.
The last thing I want to say, and this goes for both in-person and virtual events, but virtual events, though, again, we've talked about, they are the best way to market, the best way to prospect. Hosting events don't pay bills. We don't get paid for being speakers. We're not paid speakers.
You can't charge admission.
Exactly. So
no one will show up.
And yeah, that's a great point. So when it comes to this, you have to make this a money-making activity. At the end of the day, this has to give you a step closer to turning in an application. If you don't have a strong call to action, then it's a complete waste of time, money, and resources. And one thing, a mistake that people make will say, well, I'll collect the information and then I'll do a follow-up phone call with everybody. Well, what you're seeing here is that a lot of people, if you have the best presentation ever, you offer services, everybody loves you. By the time they're walking out of that room, you're out of sight, out of mind. And
they're carrying you out on their shoulders.
That likability is going down quick. So you have to, in other words, strike when the iron is hot. That does not mean you're making a sale at that point. What it does mean is that you are making appointments. So if I'm face-to-face, one of the best call to actions that I've ever heard about or have talked about has been the appointment setter in the back of the room. So if I'm in an appointment, or I'm in a seminar, and let's say I have 6 people there or 8 people there, or maybe you have 20 people there, what I'm going to do is I'm going to have one of those giant desk calendars, and I'm going to have pre-filled, pre-timed appointments to where people can sign up for them. So what I'm going to say is thank you guys so much for attending today's session. Keep in mind, Medicare is such a personal, private conversation. What you should be getting from your Medicare is different from your neighbors. It's even different from your spouses. So if you want to have a personal conversation about what you should be getting from your Medicare, I have appointments at the back of the room. If one of those appointment times don't work for you, or if those appointments are filled up by the time you get back there, that's completely fine. Come see me. This is an important enough conversation that we need to make sure we get you on the books. Come see me. We'll set something up. What that call to action does, people know exactly what their next step is. They don't have to question, well, how do I get a hold of you? How do I want to talk about this more. What should I do? They know exactly what that next step is. You will get more appointments set that way. Make sure you collect the information to remind them about their upcoming appointments, and make sure you make your business card and your information easily available to them as well. You have to tell them what their next move is, because otherwise they're out of sight, out of mind. They're not going to answer your phone call. They're not going to call you up after the fact.
Nailed it. So we're going to talk about advertising here in a moment, but we're going to switch to virtual appointments now, where what platform, this is a big thing here, is what platform you're going to use, because technology can be very hard, especially if you're not used to it. Whether it's Zoom or a GoToWebinar or some other type of program, maybe you're doing a Google meeting, I don't know, but you have to make sure that there's hopefully no software for that person to download, because that can really throw off the meeting, because they may ask me to download this, it's going to be a virus, I'm not going to do it, so I'm not going to attend.
It has to be, what's the quickest, the easiest? Again, convenience. If it requires any type of extra clicking or extra stuff, it's not going to work.
The easiest one, but the most user-friendly and easiest one, but the worst one for gathering leads, is Facebook Live.
Ooh, that's a conversation.
Because you don't have to register to watch a Facebook Live. You don't know who watched it. But all you gotta do is open up Facebook and you're there. So that's one where it's okay. That's easy to use. There's no learning curve. You just hit
No,
Facebook
just
Live and go
gotcha.
live and you're done, but no one can register. You don't have to register for it. The other one I think would be Google has their Google Meeting platform now. That's pretty slick. So if you haven't tried that out, I think they're going up against Zoom, but it's pretty much embedded in anything you have Google. And most people have some sort of Google on their machine.
And Zoom meetings are great too. They don't require you to download stuff. People know the word Zoom by now. Just remember, if you have the free version of Zoom, it cuts off after 45 minutes. So I would recommend.
Going for 20, 30 anyway.
I should. You're absolutely right. I still would recommend the purchased version of Zoom. So again,
security.
just for the security purposes. So just to recap this, Facebook Live is the easiest. You're going to probably get the highest attendance, but you will have no idea because you can't collect information. You don't know how many or who attended that.
Right.
So you have to make sure you have a very, very, very strong call to action on a Facebook Live because there's no other way to contact that information, get that information. Easiest, highest turnout. Not so great for the appointment setting portion. Zoom or Google Meetings, using things like that does require a couple extra clicks. There is a bit of a learning curve to your consumers that way. Especially for those baby boomers, not that big of a deal because they're used to the technology by now, especially going into 2022 AEP. People have been Zooming for the last 18 months, so they're more familiar with it, and it does allow you to collect some information.
Oh, our audio stopped. Do we need approval for any of these meetings? No, depending on the topic, you don't need any type of approval. So if you're talking about best way to save on prescription drugs.
Okay, so let's address really
generic.
quick what the question is so that people know what you're answering.
Sorry, do you need any approval for any of these meetings?
So by approval, what that means is, what approval by this means is registering. There's back in the day when compliance was more like there was something called registering. Evil is the word, is the term I'm going with, like then the
so you're going impersonating the cat.
No, registering an event. So right now what we're focusing on is unregistered events, either educational or registered educational events. Anytime when you have to register an event, and what registering an event means is that you're letting CMS know that you are doing an event. That the only time you have to register an event is when you're talking company specific Part C or Part D plans. So if you're going to do a seminar about United Healthcare's Medicare Complete HMO, that has to be registered. If you're going to do an event on SilverScript's new drug plan that they're going to offer, that has to be registered. Any of the topics that Mike brought up, the 10 things you didn't know about Medicare, how to save money on your prescriptions, they do not mention carrier specific information or product specific stuff, so you don't have to register them. Very helpful question, Brian. Thank you.
Yeah, good job.
Don't mind my shocked expression.
Yes, and the other thing is, if you are going to record it now, naturally Facebook Live records automatically, but we discovered this when we did our AEP boot camps. If someone's going to be participating, like asking a question, or if the webcam's on, if you have that option, depending on what you're doing, you will pop. I would, for safety, or not safety, but for compliance, not CMS, but legal reasons, I would make sure you get permission from everyone on that recording that it's going to be recorded, and you're going to share it later on, because they may not want their friends and family to know they attended for whatever reason. Maybe they're worn out for their arrest. Who knows what's going on?
Who knows?
But that also can complicate things. So I would say I probably wouldn't record it. But if you do think I do want to record it, I would get express permission from each and every attendee that's on there.
Absolutely. If you were attending mine and Mike's AEP boot camp, that's how we addressed it, recording it. We said if you wanted to have it, after the fact, and make sure you can get that information to reference it later. I wouldn't recommend recording it, because if they want more information on it, I don't want them to go to recording. I want them to go to the next live session.
I would either push to the next live session or do like a 5-minute recap video where it's just you talking it, saying, here's the main points we hit. Make sure you attend the next one. And that way you're good to go.
So let's talk about again the timing on this. Timing
Yeah.
whenever you are virtual is a little different. The reason for that is because there's so much more going on. There's so many more distractions, and especially if you're using a computer, you have no idea what that person is doing. So shorter time span means that you have more likelihood of keeping and maintaining their attention.
They're saying in 2022, the main platform obviously is video, which has been for years, but they're seeing really drop off attention spans at 2-3 minutes, and that's it. So if you're 10 minutes, you better be entertaining and you better keep their attention. And it's hard to do when they're not in front of you and you don't see them, because they can be on there. They can hit, yeah, I'm gonna watch this. Oh, I gotta go empty a dishwasher, and they walk into the other room, and you're still talking to nobody now.
You guys could currently be doing appointments, checking your emails, watching cat videos. We don't know.
Your Xbox could be on in the background like I do in meetings.
Sure.
I mean, no, I don't do that ever.
Again, one thing we talk about whenever you're doing any type of virtual events, 3 things are going to be the most important. Adding a fourth would be background. But number 1, lighting. Lighting right now, we do studio lighting because we're in a studio. The best lighting we talked about on Medicare Cafe yesterday is actual natural lighting. So if you can do it in front of a large window where you get natural sunlight. Number 2 is going to be audio. If you are doing like your audio is bad or it's cutting out, it's actually, as we're seeing here today, more people will click off because of poor audio because they can't handle like listening to something that's just like nails on chalkboard. And then number 3 is content. Number 4 is background. This is the Medicare Cafe background. We have Mr. Business here, who we'll talk about here in a little bit, but we have all of our mugs we've collected over the years from our agents. So we have a consistent background, a great background to do, especially if you do some face-to-face appointments, would to be in your office where people can be familiar with your background and know, oh, he's in his office. I've seen that in the last face-to-face appointment.
Or if they can visit your office, they've already got a sense of familiarity. When they walk in the door, it's like, I've been here before. Oh yeah, because I've seen Olivia talk with that background. So now I feel more comfortable rather than coming into a strange place.
Call to action, going to be very, very similar. You have to have a platform where people can sign up for the appointment. Strike while the iron is hot. You have to do it virtually. Some platforms we use are things like Setmore. Setmore is an appointment setting platform. It's actually free for you to use. Also things like Calendarly, but you have to find a way for them to be able to set up request appointments. Having a lead page is great too. The idea, the best case scenario is to not have them leave the platform they're currently on. So if you're expecting them to watch something on a computer and then make a phone call, you're asking them to switch devices. That's not really going to happen. So if you are going to have an appointment request, do it in a way to where they can use their computer and click to request because they're already using the computer as that platform.
Yeah, and you can't do enrollments virtually. You can, but not in this setting, because let's say you have 10 people attending your virtual session and this person says, you know what, you're talking about that dental plan, how do I get that? You can't just say, well, here, let me go ahead and enroll you now. You have to stop the meeting and then have a separate meeting with them so you can walk them through, because no one's going to want to give their personal information with 9 other people watching. So these are much more, the call to action is much more vital with these, because you can't do enrollment right there. In person, maybe you have a couple of people lingering around saying, I'd love to enroll, and be like, great, I'm gonna enroll you real quick, then I'll come back and enroll you real fast in these dental plans, or whatever plans you're offering, cancer, final expense, med sup, whatever. You know, people will be patient, they'll wait around like in the venue for 10, 15 minutes. They're not gonna hang out online for 15 minutes.
No, you're absolutely right. Joe asked a question. What's the name of the website's called for making appointments? There's 2 that I recommend because there's 2 I have experience with. Number 1 is Setmore, Setmore. It's a free service that you can actually have people, send them links. They can schedule their own appointments. It's nice. It's actually more used for like hair salons is how I learned about it. People like hair salons and different types of services like that use it. But it's a great platform. Calendarly is another one. It does have a premium tied to it, but it's kind of the best well-known in the industry and the one that people recommend most. Both are great. You just have to make sure that you are updating your calendar so that people can't schedule appointments whenever like you're at a doctor's appointment or something like that. So it's just a platform to make sure that what is reflected on the website is true.
Yeah, I like the premium side of things because you get more benefits. It also holds you more accountable to use it.
Oh, truth. Fact.
Yeah.
All right, so that is, again, virtual events. As far as topics for virtual events, the same exact topics that we talked about face-to-face can be covered in virtual. Just be conscious of the time span because you have more time not face-to-face than you have not face-to-face. So let's jump into one of the biggest questions we get, which is talking about advertising. How are you getting people in the quote unquote seats, whether they're physical seats or virtual seats? How do you get people to care?
Read the screen. Thanks for coming. No, I'm kidding. So you have a lot more options than in the past because more and more seniors are online. You have, hopefully you have a newsletter going out, or you do an e-blast for your book of business. And like Olivia mentioned, always say you and a friend are invited. So your clients and prospects know that it's open to the public and not only invitation.
For sure.
Social media, start blasting that thing out, you know, to constantly remind people, hey, make sure you join me next Wednesday at the public library where I'm going to be giving some Medicare updates, and just constantly push that out. You could do a call campaign, you could do an email campaign, you could do mailers if you wanted to. There really is no wrong way to advertise it, especially when it's a non-registered event.
Oh, for sure. It's simply just talking about it. I think another here as well is just doing it on a consistent basis. If you're doing one event, it's going to be difficult again to build that recognition. So consistency is also going to be huge when it comes to any of your advertising.
I would say like maybe the first Wednesday of the month at 10 o'clock, I'm always here doing this. Kind of like every Tuesday at 10 o'clock, we're doing the cafe. So if Olivia's scheduling a meeting or I'm scheduling a meeting, I know every Tuesday at 10 o'clock, I can't do it because I'm live on the cafe. You can do the same thing. The first Wednesday of the month, I'm always here. So if you have questions, if you ever wanted to see me in person, you could see me there. And I did this in the field, and you'd be surprised how many of your clients will show up, be like, hey, I had a question. It wasn't that important. So I thought I'd just come to one of your seminars. And oh, here's my neighbor, Bob. He's an agent in 6 months of Medicare. He had some questions too. And you'll start to see your clients and prospects bring friends and family. And, you know, just even if they're not current prospects, at least your name's getting out there. The more people know what you do, the higher probability someone's going to contact you.
For sure. And that's especially great.
Keeping you awake?
No, that's especially, it's been over 18 minutes.
I know.
Especially important for those individuals who don't necessarily have office. If you're a door-to-door agent or a virtual agent, if you want to be able to have an opportunity to sit with your clients face to face, I know, like, that's what you did. Every month you sat like in a Panera and invited people to come to you. So that's another type of event.
Always about the coffee. Yeah. So the more advertising you do, the greater probability people will show up, obviously. But I would definitely do this. The other thing I think I see a lot of agents miss on is what are you going to do during the event. So make sure you have something for them to take away, like the MedSub conference. This is the book they printed out. We will take it away. So when they show up, whether it be a downloadable piece you have in Zoom where you can download an asset, or you give them something with your name and information on there, always make sure they're leaving us something in their hand that points back to you.
For sure. Yeah. Again, because that's just marketing with mileage whenever they actually have something to take home with them.
Marketing with mileage. I don't know where you heard that.
I just thought of it.
You should. That's bonus.
I am TMing that as soon as possible.
Oh, trademarking.
Thank you. Does anybody know what a copyright does?
No, copyright writes copy.
That's what we had. If anybody knows what a copyright does, please let us know. We had this conversation yesterday. Nobody actually knows what a copyright does.
Much too long of a conversation. Yesterday about copyright. But this is also a great way to remember you after the event. Again, get tchotchkes from your carriers, which is a great thing to do, but that points back to the carrier. So if you're handing out, you know, an Aetna mug or a UHC pen, that's going to point back to the carrier. You want to point back always to yourself.
Peter, amazing question. He says, how do we offer downloadable content and format? So there's a couple ways that you can do this. One, it depends on the platform that you're utilizing. If you're utilizing a platform like Zoom, you can actually like upload content for them and that. Another great way to do it, if you don't have a capability to actually upload information, is to, I like how this is now upload. If you don't have a way to upload the information, then a great resource you can use is something like Google Drive or like a Google Drive file. What Google Drive does is a place, and it's free, to store content, which makes it shareable via a link. So what you do is you have like let's say you want to make a PowerPoint shareable. You take the PowerPoint, you upload it onto a Google Drive account, you upload it, and then you make that PowerPoint shareable, so you can click and copy and paste the link and send that link to individuals, making that a shareable file. So look into Google Drive. It's a great, it turns, instead of having to upload a PDF, you share a link.
Yeah, or you could use our agent marketing portfolio to get some more personalized pieces that are professionally designed. So for more information, watch the post email coming out tomorrow. There'll be a link right to that. Brian.
So Brian, let me just clear up Brian. Brian let us know what the definition of a copyright is. I don't need the definition of a copyright. I want to know what a copywriter,
like a human,
the profession, a copywriter profession.
So what to do from here real quick, besides look up the term copywriter, is pick your style, online or in person. Again, I am huge.
Both, do both.
Do both, but if I was going to focus my efforts on either or, I would do in person. Even during COVID, just make it more social distancing.
Spread out the chairs.
Spread out, masks, all that good stuff. But people are clamoring for more human interaction. You can do online, but every agent I know that has done online has only had maybe a couple people show up on a good one.
People are still getting used to it. I was working with an agency that did online. They partnered with the bank and they were having hundreds of people.
Now, we didn't talk about that. I'm glad you brought that up. When you partner with another person though, and they're advertising as well, you doubly market it. If you could partner with a bank, I mean, they're going to advertise as well. I bet you their reach is a lot farther than yours.
Yeah.
So once you get going with these, then you can invite in pro partners, estate planning attorneys, CPAs, PNC agents, all these other people, and they're going to advertise it. And you have a greater probability of reaching out there. But it also helps to be very polished at presenting. Nobody wants to partner with somebody that sounds like they're looking for Bueller in the classroom.
Brian, that was a beautiful explanation of what
he's just Googling it, copy paste. I know him.
Give him credit.
So pick your topics. Make sure, again, they're practical, useful, and just interesting. Pick your venue platform, your platform being online or what venue. I found my greatest success is go where seniors are because obviously they're already there. Or if you try and do some pull marketing, we try and get them in the door. Pick some place that's really easy to go to. Be mindful of traffic. So if you do one at 9 o'clock in the morning in the middle of Chicago, you got to keep in mind that they got to leave at like 7:30 in the morning to get there with traffic. So maybe you do it at 10:30 when traffic's died down. Any collateral materials, make sure you have those up and going and have a clear, concise call to action. So I'm going to read this while we do questions, comments, concerns, threats, or promises.
Awesome, guys. Again, we are going about 45 minutes versus the 18 that we recommend, but it's great content that it is also different business to business versus business to consumer. Any questions, comments, concerns, threats, or promises, let us know. If you have more questions, if you want us to go in more detail about something we didn't quite get to cover about events, but this is something, again, Mike and I are very passionate about it, mainly because once you get us talking, we don't know how to shut up. It is something we love to do. It's something Mike and I have actually been guest speakers at lots of conferences to where we get to, kind of practice what we preach here.
Yeah, and I would say if you want to combat Joe Namath, all these big call centers and carriers pushing information out there with multi-million-dollar campaigns, here's how you do it. Because when it comes to responding to a commercial or seeking out a local expert, most people want that local expert. But if there's none available, they'll have to go to the commercials.
Well, I would be careful about local expert too. They want a human.
Yes.
That's how it doesn't necessarily, because we do work with a lot of individuals who are not call centers, but they're virtual based agencies that don't necessarily work in a local sphere. A local isn't as important as much as it is just having a human connection. So even if you are non-face to face, even if you are virtual, seminars and these types of presentations are great ways to show the human side of owning your business and of your agency.
Yeah, because we all know Joe Namath is a paid spokesperson. He's not doing it because he called someplace, got really good service, said, hey, I'd love to be on 1 billion commercials for you. No, they're paying him to be there. We all know that. It's just like we talked about 1,000 times, after you see that commercial for the 90th time in AEP, you're like, well, I guess I'll just call and find out what's going on.
Did you guys know that Alex Trebek, God rest his soul? That sounds, anyways, Alex Trebek, the former
rest in peace. Yeah, you gotta do that.
He was actually a licensed sales agent because he represented Colonial Penn.
Yeah.
And in order to represent a certain carrier, in order to present on that carrier, you have to be contracted with that carrier. So Alex Trebek actually was a licensed insurance agent.
Yeah.
Joe asked, did we record this hosting event? It is recording. So we did record it. We will have it on
We're recording this?
It is.
Oh,
it says
man,
right here.
That's tragic.
Stop recording. I'm going to go ahead and